Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us instead of eating lunch. Or maybe you eat lunch here later. Or I guess you do eat lunch here later. We're going to have a conversation today about AI, artificial intelligence, although yesterday I was on a panel where someone called it, they thought it should be called IA, Intelligence Assistance. I'm going to start by asking our panel to tell us why we should believe in AI. There are lots of stories about AI, good and bad. There are concerns that there is bias already being built into some of these technologies that use AI as their basis, concerns about reducing the human factor in making decisions. So I'm going to start there. Daniela.
Because AI augments us humans and it takes away all the routine and boring tasks that we don't feel challenged to do.
That's it? That's your pitch for AI? Anybody buying it? Who's into AI? Raise your hand. I don't see a lot of hands. Shawn.
Well, obviously, I think AI will be a big plus in all of our lives. And in all seriousness, I think the AI is much more pervasive in augmenting our lives than many people realize. And I think the key word there is augmenting, because that's what current AI is really good at. It's good at helping augment and automate things that are very data intensive or very labor intensive. So for example, our first product, Plus Drive, is literally delivering on that type of value today as we release this driver-in automation product for trucks that's making trucking safer, more fuel efficient, and easier on drivers as they're literally delivering goods across the US now. And I think we'll continue to see a lot more AI applications like that in the future as people think about what are the real practical applications for applying AI to augment our experience, right? Rather than replace people or replace things that we're doing, it's about augmenting and helping automate things that we're already doing.
Okay, so let's talk about some applications. Daniela, you're going to talk to us a little bit about conversational AI and how that can change our interactions.
So conversational AI is the next generation of the IVR old technology, where when you call a service and you have a machine asking to guide you through the buttons in your phone. It's a unilateral. There's no really interaction. It's a monologue and not a dialogue. When we in the world of semantic information, and every organization has large libraries of knowledge, it's a much easier customer experience to say what you want than have you going through buttons. So conversational AI is one of these. It allows you the turn by turn, allows you a natural interaction, just like we do with humans. And the next thing to it is speech-to-speech translation. Imagine us speaking English here and listening, broadcasted anywhere else instantaneously in any other language, all relying on these types of technologies.
Well, as a Star Trek fan, I would like the universal translator, but how far away is that?
It's much closer than we think, because the building blocks exist already in conversational AI. Data is becoming another building block, and that's what Defined AI is all about. We have one of the largest marketplaces of data to jumpstart any language in terms of this of conversational AI, which is also built by different technologies in itself. So it's really plugging in another module, which is machine translation, and we are having Zoom meetings very soon, completely translated anywhere.
You mean in the next year soon, or 3 years?
Not next year, not in the next year, probably in 5 years.
Yeah, because I still have trouble having Siri and Alexa understand all of my requests, and Google Home. I try to play with a lot of technology. Shawn, tell us about your view of how AI is being implemented. Autonomous driving is the area that you focus on. Lots of people hear good and bad stories about what's happening there. Where are we in the market?
I think we're right on the cusp of a major inflection point for autonomous driving. So if you just look at sort of the classic hype cycle, we were at sort of peak hype of autonomous driverless vehicles. We're going to dominate all the highways. And now we're kind of at the trough of disillusionment. And I think that's the point where the rubber usually hits the road, right? The companies that have real products that deliver real practical value to customers will survive, thrive, and really grow. Right? And so, for example, that's why we're excited about our Plus Drive product that we launched last year, because this is a product for drivers. It's in the highly automated driving segment. So taking an autonomous driving technology, applying it to vehicles with drivers still in them, and with that, enabling those drivers to drive more safely, more fuel efficiently, and with less stress. And so we launched that in the commercial trucking industry first, because there you can have tremendous impact. I mean, this is a space where drivers drive more than 100,000 miles a year. They oftentimes are driving up to 11 hours a day. And this is a space where most accidents are caused by human error. And it all comes back to things like fatigue, distraction, driving too fast for conditions. And those are all things that this type of autonomous technology can do well. So you can augment the driving experience, make it safer, more fuel efficient, and easier on drivers. And I think you're going to see really broad deployment of that type of technology, right? Of driver-in autonomous technology applications.
So tell us the story. Give us some examples. When you say augmenting driving,
yeah.
I'm a truck driver, driving my truck and about to fall asleep. Does it yell at me and say, "Wake up, Connie," or what are you talking about?
Yeah, so these types of systems obviously have driver monitoring is an important part of that, because it needs to work well with the driver. It needs to make their driving experience easier. And so like one example, actually, this is a feature we didn't originally anticipate when we launched the product, was that drivers have had tremendously positive feedback on operating systems with these trucks under windy days. Because think of like a large, big rig truck. You have to constantly be fighting to keep it in its lane. That's really exhausting to do that all day long, 11 hours. And now if the truck just holds the lane, it actually frees up your attention to focus on the broader situational awareness of all the things that are happening around you without just fighting to try and stay in your lane. And so those are some examples of how this technology can really help. And then an example of sort of the adoption curve and why we're so optimistic about how transformational this will be in the coming years is you can look at, say, the adoption of automated transmissions in the trucking market. It went from 5% adoption to 95% adoption, exponential growth in just 5 years. And so when you have real practical products that deliver value in terms of augmenting people's experience, I think you'll see tremendous adoption. And I think that you're starting to see those sorts of practical applications within the autonomous driving sector now.
Well, it makes sense to help truck drivers stay in their lane. I get the wind, issue. Just driving a Volkswagen across the Bay Bridge in San Francisco. If anyone's ever done that, you're in the left lane. Suddenly, you're in the right lane, whether you want to be or not. So I appreciate that kind of technology. When we talk about the learning curve to use these adoptions, I mean, if you know how to drive a truck or a car, you've been trained. So I would imagine that it's not a steep learning curve to augment that experience. But what about if you're not using or not familiar with an AI system? Defined.AI works with lots of companies to get them to adopt new technologies, and you're introducing new ways for people to interact, right?
By the way, I was just going to add that conversational AI is one of the first applications in driving. Not self-driving, but driving. Because we are constantly being distracted, and more with phones, and it became a regulation really to voice enable a car and start controlling your car and your phone while you're driving, so you keep your eyes on the road. So this is actually a very interesting intersection of our both fields. Anyway, another thing is the other where the space is going is in the multimodal as well. So you may have seen or not in CES a lot of these futuristic demos where you're pairing autonomous driving and conversational AI and augmented reality. As you drive, you actually can be reading at some point in the future. You can, in a controlled lane, you can be reading a book or catching up on your emails, and actually still going around your surroundings and knowing what's going on and voice searching, what is that restaurant, what is that monument? These are all the potential futures of AI.
Okay, that's in the far future, right? Because that kind of terrifies me.
Not that far.
Reading a book while they're driving in the fast lane down the highway.
Not the fast. I didn't say the fast.
Okay, not the fast lane. We got it qualified. The premise of this conversation is, can I finally deliver? And I was struck by the word finally. People have been talking about this vision of the future. I mean, you rightly point out that we are using voice-activated commands, talking to our phones, talking to smart speakers, talking to our car, turn on the lights when you get home, et cetera. But what is some of the gating factors that is stopping AI from moving forward? Why are we saying finally? Shawn.
I mean, so I think the most important thing is if you're building an AI-based product, you need to make sure that you're really focused on a practical problem that AI is going to help you solve. Right? It's not about finding the sort of shiniest or most gee whiz type solution. Because if your technology is too expensive, that the customers can't afford it, or they just don't want to pay for it, you don't really have a product. You don't have a business. And so it's really important to focus on making sure that you can deliver real practical value. So for example, in our space, in order to deliver on this, we had to make sure that we would really optimize our self-driving stack to be able to run on commercially available hardware. Right, so commercially available mass market sort of compute and sensors, and solving some very practical but hard problems around how do you calibrate the system, auto-calibrate the whole system. Right? And so I think what's just really important is you've got to make sure that you have a practical problem that is solvable, and then really focus in on how do you make sure that you've hit the right sort of point on the price performance curve that customers are going to want to adopt your product.
Okay. Tell me, Daniela, about one of the most interesting applications of AI that you've seen that has taken you by surprise.
Well, anything that starts to merge the different modalities, vision and voice and text and 2D and 3D, all these applications. Of course, I'm an old-timer researcher and entrepreneur in the voice space. I've been doing this forever. The first time, these days, I'm very familiar with a lot of these integrations, but actually seeing some demos of speech-to-speech translation for me, with actually the text-to-speech on the target language being your own, because you can now synthesize your own voice with 2 hours instead of 50 hours like I did when I was working for Microsoft many years ago and recording voice talents, and it used to be 50 hours versus now 2. So you are moving really from a much more efficient technology, even though this is still super pioneering type of technologies. It's not mainstream yet, but you start seeing prototypes where the result voice is your own in a language that you don't even speak. It could be Hebrew, for example.
That's amazing. In 2 hours.
In 2 hours of your synthetic voice, yes.
Wow.
There are more building blocks there, but yes.
So the finally part of the AI question for you is that you're starting to see technologies actually coming together in a reasonable time frame where the load to achieve the result is not so onerous, to Shawn's point.
Yes, and it's a data problem in a lot of the cases. We are a data company, and our new other product besides the marketplace of data is all about making conversational AI from instead of big data with small data. And instead of boiling the ocean of knowledge, tuning it to a domain and to a specific domain. So all the technology is going in that direction.
Okay, so let me ask Shawn, autonomous driving, how far into the future, or are you letting your Tesla drive you around on autopilot today?
I don't
He
know.
has a Tesla.
My wife has a Tesla. I don't have a Tesla, so it doesn't drive me around anywhere. But I think the application of AI technology and self-driving is really starting to come to fruition. First, in the types of applications I've been talking about, right, which is real practical applications of augmenting the driving experience to make it safer, more fuel efficient, and so on. And so I think that's really what the focus is going to be in the next few years, and we'll start to see more and more of those types of products roll out. I mean, we will get to driverless vehicles someday. It is coming, but I think for the next several years, the focus is really on how you can apply this type of AI technology to improve the experience and safety today.
Okay, so with 2 or so minutes left, I'm going to give them each a minute to tell you what's the one takeaway. If you're a developer looking at some of these technologies and you're thinking about the future and how to build a product that's going to add the value that is going to change people's lives or improve them in some way, what is your advice that they start looking at? Daniela, you first.
Don't be afraid to try. There's lots of risks and things that can go wrong on a trial. I forgot to give some examples about that, like when the Microsoft launched that Twitter bot and shut down in 16 hours because it was becoming racist. It was learning racist content and returning racist comments.
Yes, Microsoft's Tay had a very foul mouth, which is why they shut it down.
But there are countless examples like that. But still, try fast. If you fail fast and try again, because in technology, it's all about the iterative process.
Shawn.
I would just say that I think AI technology is really, truly out there delivering for customers today. And so while markets will go up and down and sort of the hype cycle, things like self-driving kind of ebbs and flows, right, you shouldn't get too caught up in sort of which way the wind is blowing on any given week. And instead, it's all about trying to find what are those practical applications where AI technology can really deliver value for your customers, and then just relentlessly focus on delivering and maximizing that value.
So figuring out how to solve the problem and then going for it. Okay, we have a minute left. I have to ask the robot question. Are robot overlords going to take over the world? Daniela?
No, not taking over the world, but I certainly am looking forward to have robots running around in my house, bringing me beers like Amazon is now doing, bringing, cleaning, taking packages back and forth. Or in airports assisting people or in the mall. I think this is the whole robotics with human-computer interaction is something that is very exciting coming soon.
Well, people are using Roombas to deliver drinks. So you can adopt that. What about you, Shawn?
I agree with that. I think it would be great to have all those things. I'd love for my Roomba to deliver drinks. But no, I don't think robots are going to take over the world.
All right. With that, we're going to leave it. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you both for talking about this.